Welcome to Service Animal Training for WSU Extension staff, faculty, volunteers, and community partners to better understand their legal responsibilities and best practices around allowing service animals in educational programs, outreach activities, offices, and events. In this training, you will learn about federal and state regulations and statutes, strategies to provide a more accessible environment for all, learn the difference between service animals and other types of animals, and finally run through some potential scenarios. This training was developed by Dr. Kenitra Keeney, WSU County Relations Coordinator. WSU is an equal opportunity service provider. In this lesson, you will learn the following: federal, state, and WSU regulations around the use of service animals in public spaces, strategies to provide a more accessible environment for all. Our goal is to provide a welcoming environment for individuals who utilize a service animal and provide a level of knowledge and comfort to other individuals, to include the individuals who are responsible for the event. Posting the non-discrimination statement and the "And Justice for All" poster. Collecting written assurances of non-discrimination from our community partners. Placing our reasonable accommodation statement on external-facing outreach materials. And other actions which signal to the public about service animals provides an opportunity to begin a conversation around topics of accessibility. We will learn the difference between a service animal in training, and other types of animals, and why this distinction is important. Finally, we will go through some scenarios to better help service providers prepare for, train others, and help individuals with service animals have an enjoyable experience. This is a high-level overview of federal, state, and WSU regulations to assist you with a broad understanding that even if you are in a position which doesn't directly support WSU, individuals using service animals have protected rights under state and federal law. Federal laws include the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, Section 504, and the American with Disabilities Act, ADA, of 1990. The Civil Rights Laws of 1964, Title VI, were the first set of laws which established protected classes and prohibited discrimination based on certain characteristics for recipients who received federal funds. In Title VI, federally funded programs were prohibited from discriminating based on race, color, and national origin. The Rehabilitation Act of 1973, Section 504, was modeled after these laws. In this instance, it became prohibited to discriminate against individuals with disabilities in any program who received federal assistance. The similarities are important because discriminating against someone with a disability is comparable to discriminating against someone based on other protected classes. To learn more about protected classes and civil rights, please watch Civil Rights 101, Module 1 through 4. The American with Disabilities Act, ADA, of 1990 expanded on Section 504 by stating disability discrimination was prohibited in employment, public services, and public spaces. The distinction was it didn't matter if you received federal funds. Services, facilities, and access must be granted to individuals with disabilities. Let's broadly look at state laws. This overview is summated, and you are encouraged to investigate the laws for yourself. The Washington State Law Against Discrimination, RCW 49.60. This law allows individuals with service animals access to utilize the animal in employment, housing, education, and public services. Public spaces include federally and state-funded spaces, as well as restaurants, hotels, etc. Individuals using service animals don't have a requirement to wear a vest or provide documentation to verify service animal status. Miniature horses as service animals must individually be trained and requires accommodations as well. We will cover removal of a service animal later in this training. Finally, let's look at Executive Policy 39, which comes from Washington State University. If you are representing WSU in any capacity, the guidance in this policy applies. Executive Policy 39 covers topics such as the definition of service animal, emotional support animal, ESA, and service animal in training, SAIT. Handler responsibilities, responding to an animal being brought into a university facility, identifying service animals and other types of animals, accommodating animals in university spaces, allowed and prohibited locations, as well as removal of a service animal /SAIT. This training will not be able to cover all of these topics in detail. If you are interested in learning more information on service animals in training, or emotional support animals, please read Executive Policy 39, Service and Support Animals, located on WSU Compliance and Civil Rights website, or contact their office. Unless an individual works with service animals frequently, there can be some confusion of responsibilities outlined in Executive Policy 39. Handlers are responsible to ensure the animal is harnessed, leashed, or tethered, unless these devices interfere with the service animal or service animal in training's work, or the individual's disability prevents the use of these devices. In that case, the individual must maintain control of the animal through voice, signal, or use of other effective controls. The service animal must be housebroken, and the handler must comply with local animal control or public health requirements, including vaccinations and immunizations as required. They are also responsible for the care and supervision of the animal. There are instances when a service animal can be removed. Only if the animal is out of control and the handler does not take effective action to control it. If the animal is out of control, the handler should have an opportunity to bring the animal under control. If behavior persists, the handler may be asked that the animal is removed. Other instances for removal include if the animal is not housebroken, if the animal is in a prohibited area, if the animal injures or attempts to injure a person or property. The animal may be removed from the facility immediately. Prohibited areas are typically research laboratories, sterile environments, mechanical or hazardous workspaces, food preparation areas, animal research facilities, and certain athletic venues. The key is safety, sanitation, and legal implications. There needs to be legitimate documentation stating why areas are considered prohibited, such as biosecurity. The documentation illustrates an assessment was conducted, and based on sound reasoning and evidence, service animals are not allowed in a certain location. When a service animal is denied, alternative and equal accommodations must be provided. We will explore strategies to provide a more accessible environment for all. The term for all includes the individual using the service animal, the individuals responsible for overseeing the programs and events, community partners, as well as patrons and youth. Engaging individuals with disabilities who request accommodations or use service animals may not be an everyday occurrence for some. Following the next few steps give us an opportunity to educate, model accessible behavior, and provide resources. 1. The USDA Non-Discrimination Statement and Justice for All poster state in clear language discrimination based on disability is prohibited. Use the USDA Non-Discrimination Statement in its entirety when possible. When the space of the materials doesn't allow for this, at a minimum, put WSU is an equal opportunity provider. Additionally, the End Justice for All poster is a resource and is provided in multiple languages. This poster should be present where there are WSU services. This poster notifies our service population of their rights while educating our service providers of their responsibilities. WSU has produced a non-discrimination statement with more detailed protected classes, such as those with a physical disability, mental disability, sensory disability, or use of a trained service animal. WSU's non-discrimination statement can be found on WSU Compliance and Civil Rights website at ccr.wsu.edu. 2. Written assurances of non-discrimination. These are memorandums or agreements between WSU, federal agencies, community partners, and volunteers which list all the applicable civil rights laws and clearly states WSU doesn't discriminate, which means if we are using federal funds representing WSU, we will not partner or participate with individuals who do. This step can be uncomfortable for many and can be seen as controversial. The importance of this step is to create a space for conversation and set the expectation. As stated earlier, some individuals may have limited or no knowledge of their responsibilities to provide individual, equal, and meaningful access. The memorandum demonstrates you have, in good faith, communicated WSU Extension's commitment to making the space welcoming for all. We will continue exploring strategies to provide a more accessible environment. 3. The reasonable accommodation statement is mandatory and placed on external-facing event advertisements. The statement includes the point of contact, who is designated to handle an accommodation, their contact information, and a date, usually no later than 2 weeks from the date of the event. This statement includes accommodations outside of service animals, but adding something soft and unintrusive, such as, if you will be using a service animal, please let us know so we can train our staff or prepare any accommodations. This is optional. 4. Finally, we need to consider our existing policies, procedures, and messaging. We want to make sure our handbook or policy manuals not only include the non-discrimination statement, but also explain how we engage with service animals and other accommodation requests, including language access. Our website's one should also have some verbiage about accommodations to include service animals. We also need to be consistent. If the intention is to have no pets allowed, we might consider the verbiage service animals only. We also want to be consistent. If we allow other individuals to bring in animals, a service animal shouldn't be excluded. If an area has been deemed a prohibited area, we must find an alternative means of accommodation which provide equal opportunity access, not segregation. These are just some suggestions to start the conversation, as well as providing some guidance around using service animals in extension activities.
Let's learn about the nuance between service animals and other types of animals. Service animals, as described earlier in the training, is a dog or miniature horse that is trained to do work or perform tasks for the benefit of an individual with a disability. The work or task must be directly related to the individual's disability. Service animals are permitted wherever members of the public or program participants are allowed, unless animal exclusion areas have been implemented. Service animals in training is a dog or miniature horse that is undergoing training to become a service animal. Under state law, like service animals in training are permitted wherever members of the public or program participants are allowed access, unless an approved service animal exclusion has been implemented. However, neither state nor federal law provide protections for in-training animals in employment settings. Employees must request a service animal in training waiver from the university to have their service animals in training accompany them in their workplaces. This waiver is granted at the sole discretion of the university. Waivers are only available on the Pullman campus at this time. Under federal and state laws, we are only allowed to ask 2 questions when inquiring about a service dog's functionality. Those questions are, is the animal performing or being trained to perform work required because of a disability? What work or task is the animal trained or training to perform? If it is apparent that the animal falls into the above categories, refrain from asking questions. Remember, we can't ask for registration, documentation, demonstration of task or work, along with the insistence of a vest, badge, or other identification. Emotional support animal, ESA, are typically an animal that provides a benefit to a person with a disability merely by its presence. ESAs do not need to be trained to perform a disability-related task. They do not need to be a dog or miniature horse. ESAs are a type of assistance animal, as defined by the Fair Housing Act. Emotional support animals don't have the same protections as service animals. ESAs are usually not trained like service animals to perform specified tasks. We are going to explore some different scenarios and learn more about service animals in situations. These scenarios are provided as an example to build situational training, which is particular to your program. Scenario 1. The situation. An individual arrives to a lecture with an animal on a leash. Someone brings this to your attention that there is an animal in the facility and it shouldn't be allowed. There haven't been any areas listed as prohibited due to safety, sanitation, or legal implications. What should be done? If you find yourself in a situation where you have been asked about the presence of an animal, you have the right to go ask the individual 2 questions. Question 1. Is the animal performing or being trained to perform work required because of a disability? Question 2. What work or task is the animal trained or training to perform? When we ask the individual about the task the animal is trained or training to perform, we aren't asking about their disability. We are also not asking the service animal to perform the task. If it is determined the animal is a service animal, is under control, is housebroken,
and under supervision, no further action is needed. If you continue to receive inquiries about the animal, you don't need to go into detail, but let others know the use of the animal is authorized. Solution. In this instance, training is key. Training the person in charge about federal and state protections, as well as how to address inquiries. If the animal had been an emotional support animal, signs like service animals only reduces confusion. We also need to teach people in attendance that isn't okay to ask intrusive questions or demand proof of the animal's function as a service animal. Typically, we only address situations as they arrive by incorporating continuous trainings. We can build capacity in our team to better understand and navigate accessibility.
Scenario 2. Situation. We are at an extension office and have made an effort to post a reasonable accommodation statement on all our public-facing materials, along with posting the "and justice for all" posters in multiple locations and languages. However, on the front of the door, there is a "No Animals Allowed" sign. What should be done? We need to look at accessibility and civil rights as something beyond check the box. While we may mean well, we might not understand that we are excluding individuals. This is where building community relationships help us understand who is available to serve and who is being served. Solution. The placement of the "No Animals Allowed" sign might signal to individuals who use service animals they aren't welcome, or they might be challenged if they enter the building with their service animal. Using language such as "service animals only," updating webpage content around the use of service animals, and adding language in training and our program handbooks might help staff and service animals feel more comfortable around conversations. In the event someone in the building had allergies, this alone isn't enough justification to deny a service animal entry. Accommodations must be made to consider both individuals without denying anyone's.
In our final situation, Scenario 3, we explore a service animal, particularly a dog, at a fair and livestock are present. Since the use of service animals is not a regular occurrence, the first response is to remove the animal or state it makes the livestock nervous. What should be done? As we stated in earlier scenarios and the training, working with reasonable accommodations or service animals might not be a common occurrence for some. However, we know public spaces are open, so the possibility of someone using a service animal could happen. Therefore, we would provide training for people who are supporting or making decision at the event around the use of service animals, accommodations, and providing them the vocabulary to navigate the space. Resulting. In the other two scenarios, training and communication is key. Identifying prohibited areas ahead of the event allows individuals utilizing service animals and event staff time for accommodation requests. Vital information around accessibility can be posted at the entrances, available at an informational booth, placed on event maps, and posted on websites. While designating an area as prohibited is determined through assessment, having some guidelines in advance limits perception of stereotypes, generalizations, or perceived fears, instead of focusing on safety, sanitation, and legal implications. In the event a service animal is prohibited, equal access must be made for an individual to participate in events, and accommodations must be made. There are some different options to providing meaningful access, but training all stakeholders around civil rights can reduce confusion and provide access to all.
Let's review.
In some instances, experience with service animals might be rare. However, it is important to train or communicate with event staff, volunteers, staff, faculty, and community partners' expectations. Part of protecting civil rights is providing equal access for individuals with service animals or service animals in training. These rights are protected by federal, state, and WSU policies. Executive Policy 39 is WSU's policy for service animal use. In Washington, service animals and service animals in training have similar rights. There are some differences. Please consult the policy for more resources by visiting the WSU Compliance and Civil Rights website. Service animals are not required to have signs or vests identifying them as a service animal. We are not allowed to ask for proof or documentation that the animal is in fact a service dog. We are allowed to ask 2 questions only. The questions are: is the dog a service animal required because of a disability? What work or task has the dog been trained to perform? Remember, we are not allowed to ask them about their disability or require the service animal to demonstrate the task. The handler must maintain control of the animal. In the instance the animal seems out of control, the handler has the right to re-establish control. The animal must be housebroken and be under the supervision or care of the handler. Removal of service animals requires a lack of control, not housebroken, and causing harm to property or others, as well as being in a designated prohibited area. Even if the service animal is removed, providing reasonable accommodations for the individual is required. Finally, providing training to event staff, volunteers, faculty, staff, and community partners reduces the chances of violating someone's civil rights. Written communication on websites, flyers, public-facing notifications, handbooks, and informational booths provide time for the individual using the service animal and the event staff to plan. Documentation of training records, designated prohibited spaces, and established policies help both staff and service animal handlers navigate events. Thank you for your time and attention.